has just gone to MIP, but she was with
clientele.
Clientele, right? I have to say, guys, I work in the IT and the project space a lot, and Joanita is absolute a wizard at Agile. Okay, and she's a wizard at real Agile, not what the methodology says. She's been working with it and doing it, and was probably one of the most senior Scrum Masters in the country. And I'm not just saying that, right? I mean it. So I know you're going to get a lot of value out of Joanita. She will tell you what works and what doesn't work. And Joanita, thank you so much again, because you keep on being our Agile superstar. But thank you so much. I mean, it really is important for us to just see how you do stuff.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Prof. And it's, as usual, it's a great privilege to be here. And I mean, I'm always stressed out when you do the introduction, because then I've got this standard to live up to. But as usual, I'm glad to be here. This is the first time we're doing it online, so this is quite exciting. And for those of you who were part of the conversation before we started, you know, we've seen how Zoom has actually adopted Agile, and over the past 2 months, with lots of people you know, working from home and doing Zoom calls, actually started releasing new functionality every 2 weeks. I'm going to share my screen now. Just let me know if you guys don't see it, and then I think we can start. Can you?
100% Joanita can see it.
Okay, great. Let me just, okay, excellent, great. Well, as I said, nice to meet all of you. It's great to be here, and yeah, I've been probably been part of the University of the Free State for the past 5 years, so it's always a pleasure. And this year I miss going to Bloemfontein. I know I was there last year and it was a very cold day, so today at least I can sit here with my warm jacket and I didn't have to leave the house, but it's lovely to be part of this program. Okay, there's some people in the waiting room. Let me just add it. Okay, so in terms of today's agenda, we've got only an hour, and I can probably talk a whole week about Agile, but I'm going to try and put a lot of things into this hour. We're going to talk about what is Agile project management. We're going to talk a little bit about the Agile mindset and why it does require you to think differently about how you work. I'm going to use Scrum is one example of Agile. There are different flavors, as we call it. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about Agile in practice and how people implement it. And also, like what Prof. Pete said earlier, in terms of how to make it your own. Because it's not like a checkbox thing that you need to say, if we do these 5 things, we're all of a sudden Agile. So I'm just going to talk about that. If you guys have questions, we can maybe have a few minutes after the session just to answer some of your questions. Okay, so now how do I move this? Okay. Right, so we all have an idea about Agile. So as an executive, you might hear that, oh, Agile will make my people work so much harder and I can get 6 months work done in 2 weeks. And as an executive, I can keep on changing my mind about what I want because we are Agile. All right, sorry guys. As a project manager, you think that Agile might give you a list of boxes to tick and a couple of meetings to organize, because in Agile, we've got different types of meetings and we call it different things. I see there's a lot of people joining now, so that's why I'm just stopping every few seconds to let people in. Okay.
Sorry about that, Joanita.
No worries. So I'm just saying that in case you guys feel that I'm a bit distracted. Okay. I think what I will do. Can I stop my video as well? I don't know if that will help, just to make it a bit better for you guys to focus on the presentation. Okay. All right, so as developers and engineers, now we think that we don't have to answer any questions about deadlines, because deadlines are not Agile and it's so last season and waterfall. And then as consultants, we think, well, we can make a bag full of money and tell the executives that he can get all his work done in the next 2 weeks. So there are so many questions about what is Agile. Is Agile good? Is Agile bad? Is Agile methodology? Or is it just a mindset? Is Agile a fad? Is it going to blow over the next week and then we're going to try and get on another bandwagon? Or is Agile the cause of all our problems? Is Agile dead? So this is what I'm going to try and answer today. What is Agile really, and why should anybody care? In terms of how I'm going to try and answer that, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what is Agile project management, just some definitions, some theory, a little bit of history. Then we're going to talk about the Agile mindset. What does it mean to be Agile? We're going to touch on Scrum and also then just talk about Agile in practice. Okay, so Agile project management. If you look at the Oxford Dictionary, Agile is the ability to move quickly and easily and the ability to think quickly and in an intelligent way. There are a couple of definitions. So if you look at the Agile handbook, they say Agile is a way to manage projects. As Agile realizes that projects are inherently unpredictable, it also embraces this unpredictability by breaking down projects into smaller chunks. This approach makes it easy to prioritize, add and drop features mid-project. Another definition, this one is from Agile Project Management for Dummies. Agile project management is a style of project management that focuses on the early delivery of business value. It involves continuous improvement of the project's product, processes, scope flexibility, team input, and delivering well-tested products that reflect customer needs. And you'll see later when I'll show you some examples, you don't find out at the end of the project that this is not what your customer wanted. Because you're doing things incrementally, you get feedback from your customer on a continuous basis. And if something doesn't work, you can try and improve it during the next iteration. Okay, another definition, so Agile Samurai, he talks about Agile as a way of developing software that reminds us that although computers run the code, it's people who create and maintain it. And the focus of Agile is very much on people and how you engage with people and understanding their needs and making them work better. Agile is a framework, attitude, and approach to software delivery that is lean, fast, and pragmatic. But with everything else, it's no silver bullet. I mean, we've seen those projects. We all think this is how it's going to work. We've got our plan together. We've got the team all ready and whatever. And then when it comes to delivery, this is usually what happens. Okay, so this is what some of my projects look like. We've got this wonderful project charter. We've spent weeks writing specification documentation, setting up plans, getting everybody ready. And then there's this unrealistic plan that tomorrow we're going live and some miracle needs to happen. So I don't know if some of you have worked on those projects, but I've seen them many times. So my first IT project looked something like this. We spent the first 2-3 months just working on workshops, analysis, and then understanding what the client wanted. Then we got the IT infrastructure guys in. We spent another 2 months just talking about what should the infrastructure look like. And then in the meantime, we started doing specification documents. So after 6 months of the project, what we had is a wonderful spec document, files and files of papers that the client had to work through in order to sign off. So after 6 months, although we spent all that time, we had absolutely no code and no product to deliver yet. This is, this is how Agile has changed my IT projects. So if you look at what we're trying to do in a 2-week sprint, we're doing all the things that we've done in the first 6 weeks in 2 weeks. So we take an item that we want to deliver and we say, we plan, we analyze, we develop, we test. The end of the 2 weeks, we show the customer what we've done, and if the customer is happy, we can deliver functionality. And this is what we do in 2-week sprints or 1-month sprints, depending on how you want to set up your project. So what is Agile? Agile is where you You break big problems into smaller ones. Sorry. You focus on the really important stuff and forget everything else. And this also forces your customers to think about what it is that they really want, because often people want things that they don't always need. But because they can only get one thing, they make sure that the most important thing is at the top of the list. You make sure what you deliver actually works. We make sure that we test it, we get the customer to test it, so we have a working product that we deploy at the end of our sprint. And then you ask for feedback. We ask for feedback from our customers, we ask for feedback from our team, and we continuously try to improve and make things better, not just for our customers, but also for our internal people, because if we work better as a team, we can deliver more at the end of the day. And then you change course when necessary. When you get the feedback and we're on the wrong track and things are not working out, we change course. So it's not the end of the world. And then you become accountable. Because we have to deliver, we make sure that we're all accountable. It's not just the customer's fault or the developer or the tester, it's the whole team that's part of the accountability. Sorry guys, I just want to close a window because I've got people in the background making a lot of noise. If you don't mind, just give me 1 second, please. I do apologize for that. I've got the garden services here today and I don't think they work on my schedule. So Agile is not just an IT thing. I know I'm using a lot of examples in terms of developing code and how testers are working, but if you look at this, this is from the Scrum Alliance and Forbes Insights, the percentage of people or other types of departments using Agile as well. So you can see HR, supply chain, finance, different areas using Agile. Okay, brief history. I'm not going to go into the details of this. I just want to show you Agile is not a new thing, and it's basically accumulation of different things that happened over the years. If you look right at the top, in the 1930s, Walter Shea started working on the Plan, Do, Study, Act in order to work on continuous improvement. The US government didn't have the luxury of being inefficient when they were developing the atomic bomb. So they started working face to face and working together, getting all these scientists in one room. If you look at 1986, the Harvard Business Review published the new product development game, which is one of the first articles that was written around that. And this led to the 17 guys that got together at a ski resort in 2001, and they started the Agile or the Scrum Alliance. And we'll talk a little bit later about the values and things that they discussed at that get together that actually started off the Scrum Alliance. So today, there are so many different Agile and Scrum things happening in organizations, and yeah, this is where we're at. So I recently read an article by a guy called Matt LeMay, and he talks about Agile not being just a mindset, but actually a movement. And he uses the example of how art and culture as a movement has developed, similar to Agile and Lean and Scrum and all those things, is where a lot of people in parallel, but not together necessarily, start developing certain things. So he's using how the Impressionist art movement emerged when a number of artists reacted in parallel against the rigid academic rules of the time. And then similarly, he says, Agile movement emerged as a number of software developers reacted in parallel against the rigid conditions of corporate work and the need to accelerate the pace of technological changes. So he thinks that Agile is more a movement than just a new fad or a new mindset of things happening. Okay, any questions so far? Everybody good? All right, great. So Agile is a mindset. As I said earlier, we had those guys in 2001 getting together and started talking about a new way of working, and they came up with the Agile Manifesto and values. So we'll briefly touch on that, talk about the Agile principles, and then also mention a couple of the practices and flavors of Agile. Okay, so the Agile Manifesto. So what those guys at the ski resort drafted after discussing about how to work better, they came up with this. So we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others to do it. Through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. That is, while there's value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. So if you look at the 12 principles, that actually just elaborate on those 4 values that I've got here in purple. So I'll just go through the 12 principles. Customer satisfaction through early and continuous software delivery. Remember my graphic earlier where I showed that we try and deliver something after every iteration. So instead of waiting months and months to see some kind of a product, the customers get to see something small on a continuous basis. Accommodate changing requirements throughout the development process. I don't know if you find this in your organizations, but we get it a lot, where today this is important and tomorrow the strategy changes and we all of a sudden have to deliver something new. I think we've seen it with COVID. We had to make a plan of setting up a call center in a hotel during COVID so that we could keep on selling our products. This is not something that was on any backlog list in the beginning of January. We didn't even think that we needed to do that, but we had to pull out all stops to make sure that we have a couple of our sales agents set up in a hotel with the right equipment and being able to sell during lockdown. So that is accommodating changing requirements and not just saying, oh, well, sorry, this was not part of the plan, we can't do it. We had to do it to survive. So frequent delivery of working software, I mentioned it earlier, you try and deliver something frequently instead of waiting for 6 months before showing your customers something. Collaboration between business stakeholders and developers throughout the project. So the stakeholders are part of your team. They're not just some guys outside that are demanding certain things. You need to involve them in your team and also get to a point where you say when the team fails or when something doesn't work, it's because we're all failing as a team. Or when something goes well, it's not just because, I don't know, our product owner had this wonderful idea. It's because everybody worked together to make it work. So you celebrate together and you take the blame together, the accountability for that. Support, trust, and motivate the people involved. You're not going to get the best out of people if you don't support them, if you don't trust them, and if you don't motivate them. I've just joined a new company and it was quite interesting for me, the whole attitude about bringing people on board. So they've got an internship program and also they're employing some senior project managers. The one conversation I had with my manager was like, my word, this is just so a lot of new things and all these other things that I need to learn. I feel a little bit lost. And she said, don't worry, we're playing the long game here. And I think it's always not about just expecting people show up and being able to do what they're supposed to do. It's about showing your people that you're going to grow them and support them in learning the new things. So it's a whole attitude about how you manage the people that work for you. Enable face-to-face interactions. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen it, that it's been quite tough for the past 3 months to have face-to-face meetings, but it is important to be able to walk up to a person and ask them a question instead of, you know, sending people emails. And this is the whole thing with Agile, is that you try and get your whole team to sit together so they can have that conversation. Luckily, we're all very innovative, and this is why things like Zoom and Teams and Skype has completely taken over our lives, because you can still have those face-to-face but type of interactions by by the use of technology. Working software is the primary measure of progress. So you can make all these fancy reports and do whatever you want to do. At the end of the day is the product working? Can we sell it? And that is how you measure whether you are actually delivering or not. Agile processes to support a consistent development pace. It's important for people to work at a consistent pace instead of having extremely late nights, long days, work over weekends and public holidays for an unsustainable period of time, because this is when you start losing people and when people's productivity drop. So the whole idea of Agile is that you know what can your team deliver in 2 weeks and plan according to that, so that you don't expect people to unnecessarily work every weekend and every public holiday and 12, 14 hours a day. Attention to technical detail and design enhances agility. So you need to have those technical discussions and make sure that your design supports how agile you are. So you can try and learn and share work between different teams. So there's a lot of things that you can do around that if you have that technical design right from the beginning. Simplicity is important. You know, we love to complicate things because sometimes it makes us feel good and it makes us look extremely clever when we can complicate things, but that's not always the best way to do it. So simplicity is absolutely important when you go to Agile. Self-organizing teams encourage great architectures, requirements, and designs. So the key is self-organizing teams. I've read an article a couple of months ago about how AI is going to take away the role of the middle manager. And I can see it a lot nowadays with Agile teams where the team organizes itself. If somebody's slacking off, the team will tell the guy, listen, I think you need to pull up your socks. Or if we know that we've got a lot of work, the team say, well, sorry guys, we can't take leave. They also motivate each other. So there's a lot of that in an Agile organization if you do it right. Often you get managers who feel that Agile is taking away their roles, and this is when you start getting other issues when implementing Agile. Regular reflections on how to become more effective. The whole idea is that at the end of your sprint, you talk to your team and you decide, guys, what is not working? What are we going to fix next sprint? And you start looking at better ways to work together and to deliver. Okay, so just the different flavors. There are so many different ways of doing Agile. You've got Scrum, you've got Scrumban, Kanban, extreme programming, there's safe, there's less, there's all these buzzwords. And then I've also got there in the corner your own flavor of Agile. And this is what it is. So it is quite overwhelming, but there are different ways, different things that meet different requirements. So it just depends on your organization and what will work for your team. Okay, so reality about IT projects. It is impossible to gather all the requirements at the beginning of a project. Whatever requirements you do gather are guaranteed to change because that happens all the time. And then there will always be more to do than time and money allow. And that is why we try to do Agile. So I'm going to quickly talk about Scrum as a flavor of Agile. So like I said earlier, there are so many different types of ways to do Agile. Scrum is probably one of the most popular ways to do Agile. So I'll just briefly talk about Scrum. This is probably a 2-day course that I can take you guys through. So I'm going to really just rush through all the values, the principles, the roles, the ceremonies, and artifacts. But I'm quite happy if anybody has questions to answer questions afterwards. Okay, so Scrum consists of values, principles, and then you've got your roles, your ceremonies, and your artifacts. We use Scrum. There's so many different companies out there that use Scrum. I think these are just a few examples, but it is one of the, I think of the Agile methodologies, Scrum takes up about 70% of the different flavors of Agile. Scrum values, so Scrum talks about courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. In a Scrum environment, because your team members should all be on an equal footing, you need to have courage to speak up. And the courage is not just inside your team, but it's also courage to speak to your executives and courage to stand up to your customers and in order to do the right thing. Because often you'll have a play between, let's say, executives who wants their work done first, and you need to be able to say, guys, this is what we have on our plate. What will be the best decision for the organization? Not just because the CEO asked for something, but maybe the person in compliance wants something that's more important. Okay, then focus. Everyone focuses on the work of the sprint and the goals of the Scrum team. So because we're not overwhelming our teams with 500 things on the backlog list, we only focus on the 5 things that we need to do for this two weeks. They get to, they've got less distractions. We also don't have a lot of meetings in Scrum where developers have to switch the whole time. So focus is also one of the Scrum values. Commitment, people personally commit to achieving the goals of the Scrum team. At the beginning or at the end of the sprint, we discuss what needs to happen in the next 2 weeks, and every team member needs to commit to the work that we put on that 2-week sprint. So it's not just like work gets thrown and you have to do it. We all agree that this is what we can do as a team. Respect is also one of the key values of Scrum. We need to respect each other, but and know that we can do our work, treat people with respect, whether it's our internal team members, our customers, our stakeholders. So that's also critical. Openness, Scrum team stakeholders agree to be open about all the work and the challenges with performing the work. Because we make our work visible, we put it on a board, everybody can see what we're busy with, people can see what blockers we have, and because we have the feedback, continuous feedback loops, there are no surprises at the end of the sprint to say, oh, well, we didn't know about this, or we couldn't deliver because we didn't have the information. We make the work visible, and people are open about what they are dealing with. Okay, so Scrum process, this is just an idea of what a Scrum process can look like. So you start off with your vision of what the product will look like. So that will usually be between the product owner and the stakeholder. This vision then gets translated in a product backlog, which is a long list of things that this product needs to contain. Then on every 2 weeks or every month, depending on how long the sprint is, you sit with your product owner and your development team, and you decide what goes into that sprint. And during the sprint, this is the only thing that the guys are working on, is the 5 items or the 3 items that's actually on the backlog list. And as we finish work, we burn it down during the sprint. So which means as we make sure that we do the tasks. On a daily basis, we have a stand-up with the development team where the team sits and discuss about what they're working on, what are they planning to do for the day, and if there are any blockers. And then at the end of the sprint, you've got your sprint review where we show the customer what we've developed, and we can maybe deploy it depending on whether we've got a shippable product. And we also have a retrospective where we as a team sit together and say, this worked, this didn't work, what are we going to do different next sprint? So that's just the Scrum process. Then in terms of Scrum, we've got different roles, we've got ceremonies, which are our meetings, and then different artifacts. So in terms of roles, the Scrum team consists of a product owner, a Scrum Master, and the development team. Your meetings are usually the planning, the review, the retrospective, and the stand-ups that we just discussed now. And then the artifacts are your product backlog, which is the long list of things that we want to do to deliver a product. The sprint backlog, which is the short list of things that we're only going to focus on for the next 2 weeks. And then task cards, which is a little bit more detail around what is in our sprint backlog. Okay, so meet the team. You've got your roles, that, like we just discussed, your product owner, development team, and the Scrum Master. So if you look at the Scrum roles, your customer or your product owner is part of the team. As I said earlier, we're all accountable. So if the team fails, we all fail. It's not just because the development guys didn't do what they were supposed to do, because we're all part of one team. And then stakeholders are outside of the team. So in terms of the Scrum team, Scrum consists of people who know what needs to be built. That's our customers or our product owners, and people who can build it, which is the development team. And the whole idea is that in your team, you've got all the people that you require to do a specific job. So you will have your business analysts in a team. You might have your developers, your UX designers, and a tester who can create a product in that team. So we don't have to hand over to other teams or have dependencies on people working on other priorities. And then Agile is less concerned about who plays what role and more worried about the actual role being played. So they don't really care what you call yourself. We don't usually call somebody a senior developer or a junior tester. We're all equal in the team. And often what happens is you might have a senior developer who's very good at architecture, but you've got a junior guy who's just finished university and he might be brilliant at designing interfaces and things like that. So depending on the task, the junior guy who just finished his studies might be the lead developer for a specific item because he's just got more experience in it. So it's not about your role, or seniority, or the years of experience that you have, but it's about what you can do for that specific item on the list. Okay, so we spoke product owner, Scrum Master, and then your development team. The product owner, he or she is the person who represents the customer and decide what gets built. Product owner's primary job is to take care of the business side of the project, and he or she is the source of truth on the project. So if you want to know what are the priorities, what is the what needs to happen, then the product owner will be able to do that. Okay, development team. The development team is usually a cross-functional group of people that can take the customer's requirements and turn it into working software. As I said earlier, this might be a guy who's very good with front ends. It can be a SQL developer. It can be a senior developer who can help with architecture. So it's different guys, but they're all just being part of the development team. Even your business analyst is part of the development team. So we may, this is what I just said about, that can be an analyst, a developer, or just anybody else that's required to deliver for that project. Okay, then the Scrum Master is the person who safeguards the process. The Scrum Master is the one running around, setting up the ceremonies, facilitating the different meetings, and he or she is also a servant leader that protects the team from distractions. So usually if there are issues, we try and keep it outside of the team so the team doesn't get distracted, and try and remove those impediments or blockers so that it doesn't delay the team in terms of delivering. Okay, this is just an example of what a Scrum team looks like. So here we've got a very small team that was busy working on an app. As you can see, they're sitting together around a table in one room, and this is obviously taken before lockdown. It just makes it easier for them to discuss, to ask questions. And you will see there at the back, this is what we talk about making our work visible. So this is a very manual board, but you also have online boards where you can put all your tasks and work, and just makes it visible for people to see what people are working on. Okay, Scrum Ceremonies, I'll just quickly go through that. This is just the types of meetings that we have in Scrum. And the meetings are designed around the Deming cycle of continuous improvement. So if you know the plan, do, check, act is how you continuously improve the work that you do. Deming was called by the Japanese after the Second World War to help them rebuild their factories and make the guys more productive. And this is where this whole model was developed. So if you look at planning, sprint planning, we've got the sprint planning meeting where we decide this is what we're going to work on, and then we update the product backlog. The doing part, you've got your daily stand-up and the daily work that happens. So in that stand-up meeting, we talk about whatever the guys busy with, and are there any impediments that we need to remove. Then the check part is the sprint review or the demo. This is where we show our customers or product owners what we've delivered, and we decide whether there's any products that we need to release. We get feedback from the customers, because often when they start seeing what it looks like, they can say, oh, wow, but what about this? Or no, this is not really what we wanted. So you get that feedback loop from your customer. And then in terms of ACT, after the sprint review, we sit with the team. So this is an internal meeting. We don't necessarily invite managers or other stakeholders. where the team talks about what went well, what didn't go well, what can we do better, and then we try and improve our internal teamwork as well. So if we talk about the different Scrum ceremonies, always think about the continuous cycle of improvement, plan, do, check, act, and how we can improve the way we do work. Okay, so this is just a high level. We already spoke about these different meetings, so I'm not going to go through this again. And then if you look at a 2-week sprint, this is what it typically looks like. I've scheduled all my other meetings, the demo, the retrospective, and the planning meeting for the Friday afternoon. But then the rest of the week is open. So apart from your 10-15 minute stand-up in the morning, your team can actually just focus on doing real work, and they're not distracted by meetings and having to drop what they're busy with. So that's the whole idea also, is to create focus, so that your team can work and not sit in meetings for half of the time. Okay, artifacts, those are your Scrum documents or things that you produce. So I'm just quickly we spoke about the backlogs. So Scrum artifacts are the things that we produce and decide to give information so people can see what the team is working on. It helps in decision making, so it needs to be visible. People need to have access to these artifacts. It keeps track of what work to do and what work was done. Scrum has no documentation is a myth. I know a lot of people say, oh yeah, but you're doing Agile, so you probably don't do any documents. And that's quite a big fallacy, because you do need documentation. And even though they say you don't need a project charter, I've seen that the Agile projects with project charter were far more successful than the ones that just started doing some work. So we definitely do need documentation. Product backlog, that's a long list of things that we have to do. The sprint backlog is the short list of things that we're going to focus on in the next 2 weeks. And then you've got your task cards or your user stories, where you talk about, you've got more information around every task that the team will be working on. Then you've got other things like an impediment log. Impediment log is a list of blockers, and this is usually what the Scrum Master runs with and say, these are the risks, these are the things that we need to try and get out. Your product vision is quite important, and this you usually create at the beginning of your project. So you say, this is what we are going to, this is what this product will deliver. Your sprint goal is almost like a mini vision of what it is that you want to deliver in the next 2 weeks. And your burn down chart is almost like a report to say, we've put in these 5 tasks, this is how many points we're going to deliver. And then it just measures on a daily basis how far or how close you are getting to delivering on your sprint goal. Okay, so how we use those artifacts, you start off with your product vision. The product vision translates into a long product backlog list. So that's the long list of things that we want to do. When we do our planning meetings, we take some items out of the long list and put it into the short list based on what is our goal for the specific sprint. Then when we do the sprint, we then deliver the product after that. So that's just how we use those artifacts. Just an example, so this is just a close-up of the photo that you saw earlier, where we have the product backlog and the long list of things that the guys need to deliver. This is another example for you. And then here is our board. So to say, for this sprint, this is what we have to do. We've got a doing column where we say this is what we're currently busy working on, and then this is done. And like I said, we get online boards like this, but it's just quite impressive to look at what it looked like in the days before technology, where we had to write everything on little sticky notes. So Agile in practice, I see I've got another 10 minutes left, so we will definitely have time for questions. And what I'm going to talk about here is that it's not so simple. I mean, it looks quite easy, you just get a couple of guys to stand up every morning, have a 10-minute chat, and then you decide on the 5 things that they're going to do, and now you're Agile. So, but it is definitely not as simple as that. The Scrum Guide talks about Scrum is lightweight, simple to understand, but difficult to master. And I never understood it until I tried to implement Scrum myself, because we thought, oh, well, we've all been on this 2-day course. We all know what does it mean to have a stand-up, what is a product backlog. but it didn't make us overnight agile. You know, that journey took 2 years, and you know, even after 2 years, we were still struggling because it doesn't make you agile when you just go on a 2-day course. And this is what I say. So teams or organizations don't just become agile overnight. You need to take your team on a journey and to answer those questions in terms of why, how, and what. So why do you want to implement agile? Some people think, oh, well, we're going to make more money, or we're going to have less people, we're going to get more work done. And that is not always the right answer to the why. So as an organization or as a team, you need to decide, why is it that you want to do agile? And then what is it that you want to get out of it? And then once you've got this goal, you've answered your big why, then you can say, how am I going to do it? How is Agile going to work for my team? Because you can't take the same 5 things that another company is doing and thinking that it will actually work for your team and your organization. And then once you start implementing, you need to ask what. So the what question here is more around the real world outcomes that you see while implementing Agile. Do you see any successes? If you see successes, then you know you're on the right track and you need to keep doing more of that. If you start seeing warning signs, you need to ask yourself, why am I seeing these warning signs and how can I fix this? So it's not just an overnight thing, it's a continuous implementation of Agile and getting your teams to start living that Agile way. And then, like I said, it's not as simple as it sounds. Agile is quite demanding. It wants you to think about it and to take action. And then it requires a new way of thinking and a new way of working. And in terms of thinking and doing, you need to constantly make sure that it's synchronized with each other, because if it's not, you might run the risk of thinking that if it's just thinking, we're just tweaking some operational activities. We're introducing new types of meetings and we're doing away with certain other things. So that's not the ideal situation. If you just if you have no action around it, then you have got the risk of saying creating a divide between what you say and what you do. And this often happens where executives say, oh yeah, but we're agile because now I can just throw in whatever I want to, but the company structure is not conducive to the people being agile. Or you have managers that feel threatened by agile and everything they do and think is against what you are trying to implement. So there's a constant synchronization that you need to require between thinking about what you're implementing and actually doing it the right way. And then talking about the movement, remember we spoke about how the art movement has changed. So if you see Agile as a movement, it makes it clear that something that is something that you need to do together. So it's not just something that comes from the top or 1 or 2 guys at the bottom thinking, oh, well, we're going to start doing Agile things. It's a complete organizational thing, and also aligning yourself with what people are doing outside of your organization or outside of your team. So Agile wants us to be open, it wants us to collaborate, and it wants us to think about what we are doing. So that reflective part is very, very important. And then it also asks us to look beyond the correct methodology and ticking the box of a new process or tool. I've worked in an environment where we had quite a senior guy who went on to Scrum training, and because he got the Scrum Master certification, he thought, well, now I'm a Scrum Master. But for him, it was still about ticking boxes. So just a silly example, we wanted to get like a 5-minute job done by another team. So to set up some users for testing, it would have literally taken the BA 5 minutes. And this guy, because we didn't follow the process, he wanted us to come and sit in a 2-hour planning session to actually get our user requests on the list. And I'm like, but you've been so rigid in sticking to the process that you're not thinking about how you're collaborating and being agile about things. So it's a very, very fine line about, and also finding the correct methodology that will work for your team, because what works for one team, one organization won't work for everybody else. And then also Agile asks us to accept our uniqueness and complexity as individuals and organizations and find ways in which we can work together. And this is something, like I said, I just read this article by Matt Lemay, and he's got some really cool ideas about implementing Agile. Then he talks about being stewards and followers. So Agile may seem like a tangle of methodologies, frameworks, rules, and rituals, and all these values and all the other things that we just went through. But he talks about values of being simple, and it's broadly applicable. So although it might sound complex to implement all these things, it's the simple values that gives us that scope to have different approaches that will work for your specific organization or your specific team. And then everybody who wants to adopt Agile needs to figure out how best to put the values and principles into practice to meet their own needs. And then if we take on this responsibility, we become active stewards and not just passive followers of an Agile movement. Because the risk of being a passive follower is that you will quickly move on to the next fad when that comes along, and then just chuck everything else away that you try to adopt in terms of Agile or Scrum or whatever approach you try to follow. So we talked about think differently and making sure that you also start doing things differently in this environment. So I just want to end off by showing you this video. It's a very old Apple ad, so but I think it just talks about where the world that we live in now. We can't just think and do the things the way we used to do. So I'm going to end off with this video. If you guys have questions afterwards, please let me know. I would love to engage with you on this topic.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Right. Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Hi, Joanita. Thank you so much. That was amazing again. Joanita, if I can maybe just something else that really stuck with me. And again, going on to Agile has got a very good reason, but you've got to be very, very good on managing it. I remember you were telling us at a clientele, there was actually a time where you had some of the programmers were almost not allowed to come in to the office except certain days, because otherwise, as soon as they come into the office, they get involved in all other things. And then again, your Scrum doesn't work.
Yes. So what I've implemented in my teams, I found that because, so I worked on the roadmap team and I had a lot of senior developers, but because they were so good at doing a lot of things, they were often distracted and asked for things. So I made them, I booked out days in their diary where I opened them up for working from home. And that did help a lot, because as soon, like you said, as soon as they come in, then this one wants this and that one wants that. And it is extremely distracting. And then, when you see then the day's gone and they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So it just helped them as well to give them that space to think. And, I don't know, I mean, I've never been a developer, but it is quite intense to just start coding and doing things, and as soon as somebody asks you a question, it's just poof, everything just explodes. So it's just better for them to do that.
Joanita, thank you. Questions for you, Anita. I know there was lots of discussion around Agile.
Hi, Joanita.
Hi, Kingsley.
Yes, this presentation was very insightful and very informative. It really explained the Agile process very well. And what I would like, especially for us that are involved in software IT projects, what I would like to ask is, can these can this presentation or these slides please be shared with us?
I'm happy to do that. I will definitely share it. Marie, I'm sure you guys have a process of sending it out. Otherwise, I can also post it on SlideShare and then just give you guys the link to it. So that's no problem at all.
100%, Joanita. You can just forward it to me and I will make sure that everybody receives it.
Okay, fantastic. I might just have to put it on Dropbox because it is quite a big presentation, and I'll also just remove the video because the video is quite. But I'll add a link to the video for you guys.
100%. Thank you.
Great, but thank you. Thanks, Kingsley. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Are you guys following an agile approach at work?
Yeah, to a certain degree.
Okay, and it's tough.
Yes.
Okay, no, that's good. Any other questions?
Hello, Joanita. I just want to know, how do you keep up with the competition while also monitoring customer feedback?
What do you mean competition in terms of just external competition or?
Yes, external competition, because with Agile, you constantly monitor customer feedback and you adjust the project process according to the feedback that you get from your customers.
Yeah. So most of my customers are internal. I'm currently working with an external customer, but we also, so they have their prioritization in terms of what they want the product to do. Whatever conversation happens outside in terms of which market they want to play in, it's not part of our conversations, but they will then come back and say, we need to go live with this new product in a month's time. And then based on what we then discuss with that customer, we say, okay, so this is what's the minimum viable product, and this is what we can do in the next month. And then, you know, we obviously divide the team, do the work. There might be some things that we say, okay, this will be post go live, so MVP 2, minimum viable product version 2, to say, okay, at least they can go live with the customer in the next month and deliver a new product. But then in a month after that or 2 weeks after that, we'll give them additional functionality. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. Is it IMPU? How do I pronounce
No, it's IMCA. Yes, but you answered it. Thank you.
All right, perfect, great. Anything else? Any other questions?
Any more questions for Joanita?
Yeah, Joanita, my name is Vishen. I'm in construction, and I noticed that obviously your presentation, you're IT focused, but I found it really insightful and helpful, especially with the parts that focus on the principles and values that go into Agile. I think it can obviously carry over into any industry. So thank you for that. Just
No, it's a pleasure. So Vishan, I think there's I'm just trying to think of the author, but he wrote the book called Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. He actually uses an example where one of his Agile colleagues refurbished his house using Scrum. So he got all the contractors on site in the morning for stand-up, and he managed to do his work in far less time because let's say, for example, the plumber knew that the tiler will be on site at a certain time. He could plan his work accordingly. And then this guy's neighbor tried to also refurbish, and I mean, I think it took him like two months longer to do the same type of work at his house. So I'll just get the title of the book, but they actually, you know, he uses it as an example of how Agile is used in the construction industry as well.
Oh yeah, thanks. I'd appreciate you sending it here. That's it's one thing in construction. I think it's that happens on a daily basis where things pop up every single day. It causes delays, and those delays obviously lead to projects finishing. Well, it's never known that a construction project finishes on time, but I can see how Agile can assist in speedy delivery.
Yeah, because you get
thank you.
Yeah, you get people to talk to each other. So
Yeah.
That's quite. But I'll send you the link to that book as well. But it's quite interesting. Imke, I see you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask another question?
Yes, I just want to know. So, how do you keep a balance in Agile project management?
What do you mean balance in terms of
Yeah, because you're constantly monitoring and adapting through the changes of what people or problems might occur.
Yeah, so I mean, so you also learn what your team can deliver in a 2-week sprint. So for the first couple of sprints, you start to figure out how much is it that you can do, and then you start realizing what are people's strengths and how much they can deliver in 2 weeks if there are no interruptions. And then when you do your planning, you say, okay, so this is our focus. We need to deliver this. How much of this work can we take into this sprint? So where we talk about story points, so we assign a sizing to these stories, and we say, okay, our capacity as a team is to do 40 story points in a 2-week sprint. So we start getting to know how much time or how much work we can bring in. And often it happens that because of demands, we might have to deliver more than the 40 points. And this is where you start, I see there's some people joining us now. This is how you start adding then, this is when people can actually start working overtime. And so instead of the 40 story points, you might be delivering 55 story points, but then you justify because there were maybe additional requirements or deadlines and things that we had to meet as a team. But it takes time, and it's, some teams get into it far quicker than others, and some people just need some more coaching to get to that point.
Okay, thank you.
It's a pleasure. Great. Anything else? I think that's it. Prof. Pete? Pete, I think you are muted, so I'm going to just...
Okay, now you can hear me again. Sorry, Joanita, that was me. Thank you so much for your time again. It's it really is so interesting, and it's also for us just to remember where it came from. It actually comes from the whole focus was developing systems and applications, which normally goes south and it grows arms and legs, and then when you go live, you only done 60% of what's required. So I think that's also the key focus. Doesn't mean those disciplines can't be used in other areas, but it works so well in software development.
No, definitely. And you always end up blowing your whole budget, and then you've got no product to show for it because you've spent all the money on contractors and whatever else you do. But great, thank you so much for the opportunity. Lovely to be here today. And I hope you are doing the rest of the project management program with Prof. Pete.
Thank you. Joanita, will you mind just giving me the control back? I'm sure the group would rather have you have the control, but...
All right, I'm going to make you the host. And there you are. Great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joanita. Thank you very, very much.
All right, thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
And you too. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.